Hello everybody, it's hobbitsizz, and welcome to another Legends of Runterra video. Welcome back for those of you who have seen a couple of my things, and for those of you who are new, hello, hi, I'm hobbitsizz, meet to nice you. So I'm going to be doing a little bit different things today. For starters, this will be my first video that I'm posting to Reddit, so if you're seeing this after seeing my stuff on Reddit, hey, how you doing? Welcome aboard. Welcome to the Hobbit Hole. That's what I'm gonna call it. Okay, so what are we doing? Why am I putting emphasis on this video? Well, if you've seen the title, description, etc., I have a deck that I really want to talk about and that I kind of want to give a more detailed description for. So this deck is a Swain Sejuani deck. The emphasis is on the Swain, but Sejuani plays a very important role as well. Now I'm talking about this deck. I think it's good right now in the meta. It's not tier 1. I think it's like a tier 2 deck, but I had a lot of fun playing it, and it's been performing decently well. I can say right now I've played 25 games on it. My Mobilytics, it hasn't quite updated, so it didn't calculate my last few games, but I've played 25 games with this deck so far, and I have about a 60% win rate at this point. Maybe like 59, 60, somewhere in that range. So decent win rate, pretty good. Over more games, that'll probably go down to, I assume, closer to around the 55% margin. But for right now, sitting at over 25 games, sitting about 60%. So that's pretty good. So I'll be going over this deck and how you can make it work for yourself if you want to. So let's kind of get this started. So what's the goal of a Swain Sejuani archetype? Well, the goal of this is kind of to stall out your opponent's board until you can finish them with your late game finishers of Swain plus Leviathan. That's really the biggest thing, right? Leviathan is your finisher. For those of you who don't know, Leviathan, giant awesome card. 8 mana, play, draw Swain. So it draws you Swain, which is important to note too. And round start, deal 1 damage to the enemy 3 times. This is the round start effect, this right here. Crazy. Absolutely monstrously good. Why? Because it does next damage 3 times. Means it gets 3 procs for Swain's level up, because Swain's level up, you dealt 12 non-combat damage. But more importantly, if I can get to Swain, his level up. When you deal non-combat damage to the enemy nexus, stun the strongest back row enemy. So this effect, this stun effect, happens on each individual ping of the Leviathan shot. So it hits 3 times, so that's 3 enemies stunned if you have a leveled up Swain on the board, which is why this combo, Leviathan Swain, is so brutal and a very good finisher. So what are we trying to do with this finisher in mind? Well, we have a deck that is composed around the idea of trying to get Leviathan out and trying to stall the board until we can get our finishers. Now, one of the good ways to stall the board, I guess while we're talking about champions, is Sejuani. Sejuani can be an excellent way of removal because she can give someone Frostbite and Vulnerable. And her level up also procs off Leviathan because it's each round, the first time you damage the enemy nexus, Frostbite all enemies. So at the beginning of each round, if you have Leviathan, upgrade Sejuani, you'll get an immediate Frostbite on their entire board, which is huge. Sejuani can also work with Culling Strike to take out bigger units that Culling Strike could not normally. So we got that in mind. Sejuani can be a nice board stall. She can be good removal. But how does this deck really perform? We know we have to get Swain. We know Sejuani is a good tool. What else? How does it work? Well, our early game is composed of Everosan Sentries, Legion Grenadiers, and a variety of removal cards in the form of Culling Strike, Death's Hand, Ravenous Flock, things like that. Move on to the mid game. We have a full set of Ember Maiden. I'll talk about her in a moment. A full set of Kindly Tavern Keeper. This is healing is necessary in a lot of matchups. Burn, Pirate aggro, it's very prevalent to have a little bit of healing, and in most cases, having a healing in your back pocket can save you quite a few times. So I do like Kindly Tavern Keeper. Can also be very good for saving Leviathan if it takes too much damage. A one-off of Fervor, only a one-off because we don't actually have that many targets that we want to Fervor on our board. Most of our units, besides like Swain and Leviathan Sejuani, have very low health. So this is most of the time killing one of our units, which is why we don't want too many of that. A one-off of Riven. Riven, just a solid 3-drop. I was debating between Riven and Draven. Ultimately went with Riven because she can give Overwhelm or +2 attack to your already overwhelmed units, like Sejuani, like Leviathan, for a better finisher. 2 copies of Scorched Earth, 3 clogs your hand, 2 is good. Scorched Earth deals with Ground Plaza, and it can deal with big units and kill them off easily. 2 copies of Babbling Burg, however you say his name. So he's good. He can draw you Sejuani and Leviathan reliably. The good thing about the ratioing between 2 to 3, Sejuani, Leviathan, is depending what you draw, or what you have in your hand, when you play Babbling Burg, you can kind of get a feel for what you're going to get based on odds, right? So if I have 1 Sejuani in my hand, and then I play Babbling Burg, but I have no Leviathans, well, I have 1 Sejuani, I have 3 Leviathans, I have a 3 out of 4 chance of drawing a Leviathan, so most likely I can count that Babbling Burg will draw me the Leviathan. Likewise, if I have 1 Leviathan in my hand, and I have no Sejuanis, so I have a 50% chance of drawing a Leviathan or a Sejuani. At that point, it's kind of like a crapshoot, right? But it's like you can kind of tell how useful Babbling Burg will be at the situation, given what you want to draw and given what the odds are, which is nice because only it's a very small pool of things you can draw from. Now, on that note, we also have 3 copies of Wolf Rider and 3 copies of Swain, of course, because Swain is our champion premier for this deck. So Wolf Rider is actually very important here. I have a previous video that I talked about this deck, and I kind of went over it in a little bit of detail. But Wolf Rider, the Plunder, gain an extra mana gem, empty mana gem, is really important. Because getting Leviathan out on turn 7 can win you the game right there. Which is, I don't need to say, like, you get it out, your big card 1 turn earlier, and that can win you the game if you play it right. And if it doesn't win you the game on the spot, it provides you a huge tempo swing. So for that reason, I really like Wolf Rider, and he's pretty easy to proc in this deck. Now, I did say we have 3 copies of Ember Maiden, what we're doing with her. Well, Ember Maiden, round start, deal 1 damage to everything, including Nexus. So round start, she triggers Plunder, or she has the ability to trigger Plunder if she survives. So if we play her round 3, she then hits the Nexus, everything, which helps level up Swain, and she hits the Nexus, so she can then get the Plunder, so we can play Wolf Rider on curve, getting that empty mana gem as early as possible, which is fantastic. It's also very nice to be able to go Wolf Rider into a Sejuani next turn, because again, getting Sejuani out, any of your big cards getting out a turn earlier is just fantastic. So that's why we have Wolf Rider. And Legion Grenadiers are also kind of helping along the same method, but a little distance from Ember Maiden, because they're a 2-drop. So it's not direct correlation like Ember Maiden can directly hit the Nexus, but Grenadiers can often put your opponent in a tricky spot. Say you're attacking on turn 4, and you have 1 to 2 Grenadiers out, which is not uncommon. So you open attack with both the Grenadiers. It's like, all right, what does your opponent do in this situation? Even if you have 1 Grenadier. If you're against a Targon deck, well, okay, they can just hush the Grenadier. But for the most part, if you attack with a Grenadier on turn 4, you will be getting that Grenadier to proc, or you will just be hitting their face. Like, there's very little ways besides like hush to deal with that. So you can guarantee if you have attacking turn on 4 with a Grenadier on board, you can get that nice Plunder and get the Wolf Rider. And that's one reason why Grenadier is so important. Where is he? Grenadier. And likewise too, if your opponent is attacking you on turn 4, you can put them in a spot where if they know this deck well, which they probably won't because no one plays this deck, right? This is a deck that I found last season and that I then modified and kind of made it my own, and I've seen none of them on the ladder this season. Absolutely none. So no one's really going to expect that to not attack into this unit just so it can activate a Plunder effect. Like, they'll probably be thinking in terms of, okay, well, it's 1 proc for Swain because it is 1 damage, and it's 1 proc for Sejuani to deal damage in 5 different rounds. So maybe they'd be judging the odds of that, but that's a lot less valuable than the Wolf Rider. So it depends on how they value it, and you can often make some sneaky plays because of that. So that's the basis to the deck. We have a couple slots which are variable. So Death Lotus is one of those slots. Death Lotus is queued in to deal with a lot of the ephemeral aggro right now, or ephemeral combo decks with like Lucian and all the sharks that get summoned, as well as dealing with the very annoying Fizz elusive deck, which runs the 3 copies of the Babbling Burglefish, and 3 copies of Fizz, and lots of 1/1 elusive Poros. So having just something that can deal 1 damage to the entire board or the entire attacking board, even if you don't have a unit represented, which is why this is a very nice card. It can help out a lot. So that's why this is just a one of. It's just kind of like a tech card. Also, we kind of do have this slot of like Riven. Like I said, Riven is replaceable. I ran this deck with like Braum before. Braum kind of worked, but not really, because he didn't help enough in being able to like get us to proc Scorched Earth and Ravenous Flock, because not dealing damage to people obviously does not help us get those to activate. So he was okay. He often burnt a lot of removal, and he could generate Staporo, but he didn't quite fit with this deck that well. So now I'm trying out Riven, and I've played a couple games with the Riven variant. It seems fine, but you know, it's a flexible slot that I can go on based on what I need. Thinking Riven, maybe even go with the Brutal Hunter if I need more removal. But, you know, we got a couple of flexible slots so we can kind of adapt to the meta that way. Besides that, the core of the deck remains the same. And now I'm kind of going to run through how you want to play this deck. So that's kind of the overview of the cards and some of the combos. Now, how do you want to play this? Well, you want to start off in the early game by... Turn 1, you can't do anything, obviously, so you're banking that mana. Turn 2, you'll play Sentry or Grenadier if you don't need to bank the mana. A case where you might need to bank the mana is if, say, you really wanted to play a Death's Hand on turn 3, right? If there's a unit like a Lucian or something you really want to get rid of with a Death's Hand, you might bank the mana so you can play like multiple copies of Death's Hand or Death's Hand Culling Strike, something like that. But for the most part, on turn 2, you're pretty safe at being able to play a Sentry or a Grenadier, depending on what you have. After that, it gets a little tricky, depending whether you need removal, maybe you want to play Ember Maiden. If you're against a more aggressive deck, playing Ember Maiden early is fantastic, because it really puts a threat on them developing the board. Like Pirate aggro, Discard aggro, things like that are really, really threatened by Ember Maiden, because a lot of their units have 1 health or low health. So having Ember Maiden for 1 turn kills a lot of things, or having her for 2 turns could wipe their entire board. So she's very threatening. It's also important to note, if you're playing against a deck with removal, like a Draven Ezreal or something like that, to be able to protect your Ember Maiden, right? So we have 3 copies of Troll Chant, which can be a very effective tool against like Mystic Shot. And so that's kind of your early game. You're setting up, you're trying to remove some threats with Death's Hand and Culling Strike, and you're really trying to keep yourself somewhat healthy and set up for your Wolf Rider if possible. Now, once Wolf Rider is set up, at that point, you're just waiting around until you can play your big card of Leviathan. And it's mostly a waiting game. If you can take tempo, take it where you can. But you're playing this low and slow. And once Leviathan hits the board, you can basically stop attacking. I know that sounds weird, but for the most part, if Leviathan hits the board, you can then play Swain next turn. And then Swain will just keep stunning everything, and you only need to attack when Swain stuns the board. Other than that, you can just wait and play very reactively to what your opponent does. Because once Leviathan's on the board, you're putting the opponent on the clock. Right? For the most part, you'll probably have, I don't know, anywhere in the range of like 2 to 5 damage on your opponent when the Leviathan comes out in a normal game. If you're doing really well, you could have more. Let's say you like have 5 damage, right? You have 5 damage on the board. You put out Leviathan. Now Leviathan does 3 damage a turn. So 5 divided by 3, they have 15 divided by 3, sorry. They have 5 turns left, like total. So they only have like 2 attack turns, right? But 5 turns to deal with Leviathan before it just wipes them out, assuming they don't have healing. So that just puts them on the clock and starts being like, okay, we need to deal with this kind of thing. So at that point, they have to make an action. They have to deal with Leviathan. If they do nothing, they just die to it. And that is a very nice position for you to be in, because you can play very reactively to whatever they do. And that is the gist of the deck and how to play with it. I will say that some of the weakest matchups for us are boards that are able to go wide. As you can tell, we have a lot of single target removal with the Culling, the Death's Hand, the Flocks, the Scorched Earth, the Fervor. It's all single target, right? The only thing we have is Death Lotus for multi-target. So in units like Ephemeral combo decks and the aforementioned Fizz deck, we do struggle a lot. We have Ember Maiden, which help out some, but she is also susceptible to removal herself. So we do struggle with wider board states, especially if things have more than 1 health, being a wider board state. But other than that, does very well against Lee Sin. The reason why I'm playing this deck mostly is because I hate Lee Sin and Hush. And Hush does literally nothing to Leviathan. Doesn't matter if you Hush Leviathan, its ability starts on the start of the turn, and we only need its ability. You can Hush its Overwhelm, whatever. Like Hushing Swain, again, it's the start of the turn, so it doesn't matter. Sejuani, start of the turn. Well, Sejuani could matter. I'll take that back. Sejuani could matter if you don't have Leviathan on the board. But if you do, it doesn't matter. So most of our win conditions and our like big units are non-hushable. Like there's no value in hushing them besides to get rid of like Overwhelm. So that's why this deck performs very well against Lee Sin. And that is my spiel on the deck. Okay, so in this game we are against a Heimerdinger Zoe. Now I also made a Heimer Zoe deck. I've played a little bit with it. So this is good for us because this is a deck which has Hush, right? So we're not really afraid of Hush. That doesn't matter too much. If they want to use Hush early, great. In late game, it's not really going to do much for them. So that's okay with us. Now we have an interesting combo here. Because we know his early game will be comprised of like Zoe and Mountain Goats and things of that nature. So it's, do we think we could get the Wolf Rider block off? Do we want to gamble on being able to get Legion Grenadier into Wolf Rider into Sejuani? Well, we don't have to gamble, right? We have Death's Hand. And they have no way to stop a spell from hitting the Nexus. They have no way to like deny it or anything. So on turn 3, we can guarantee Wolf Rider and then guarantee into a Sejuani. So I am a huge fan of this hand to start, and that's beautiful. So we have our full combo set up in our hand. The only problem is we can't really deal with Zoe. Right now, if we want to Death's Hand her, we can. And there is an argument to be made for, okay, I can Death's Hand Zoe, and I can immediately knock her out. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to play Grenadier, because I'm aware that he might pass on hers turn 4, right? But I really want to get Wolf Rider out. I think the most important thing right now is to get Wolf Rider out and get our Leviathan out as early as possible. If he just wants to attack with Zoe and doesn't want to risk the Mountain Goat, I'm okay with that. This Grenadier is just to block the Mountain Goat. Okay. Perfectly fine. He doesn't want to do that. Absolutely fine with me. Now, this is annoying, the super cool star chart, because it could get an Equinox. And Equinox is very detrimental to this deck. So what are we going to do to counter this? Well, we can save Death's Hand for next turn. And likewise, we can also save Grenadier. If he attacks us, open attacks us, and we are able to block with this, then we don't need to Death's Hand. And then we can just play Wolf Rider without needing to Death's Hand. So I'm actually just going to pass here. Because playing Grenadier only grants me the benefit, or attacking Grenadier only gives me the benefit of possibly removing the Goat. So Equinox is very scary, and so we have to be wary. If he is able to play this card now, then that's great. We're basically in the clear. This deck does usually run a 1 off of Bastion, so if we do try to like Death's Hand Zoe, he might Bastion it. I think it'd be kind of a waste. Okay, so he's not going to attack with the Goat. He doesn't want to deal with that. So we're going to try Death's Hand Zoe. Now, we do want Zoe to obviously not hit us, to not generate more star charts, which he did not, which is great for us. And now we are going to Wolf Rider. And now we have an extra mana gem, and we just are on track for a very good swing of turns. Okay, so that's really, really good for us, the fact that it's a Messenger and not Equinox. Because Equinox can just shut down. It's basically the only thing in this deck outside of like Thermo Beam, which just shuts down Leviathan wholeheartedly, completely, 100%, shuts it down. So what are we going to do this turn? Well, we do have 6 mana. So... And I don't really want to pass here, because now, with my extra mana, I can control the board. Playing Sejuani is a huge tempo play. He might just Heimerdinger here, which is kind of a risk I have to take, because if I pass, he could just pass back, and that's worse for me, because now I need to be applying pressure. Because I got my tempo swing, and now we need to roll with it, because now I can have Sejuani out. Turn 7, I can play Swain. Turn 8, I can Leviathan, and then we have a winning combo. So Trail of Evidence. That's very interesting. Okay, so he's Thermo Beam. That's fine. So him using a Thermo Beam here is actually completely and totally fine. Because he then shows me that he has 1 less Thermo Beam to deal with our Leviathan. He could have another Thermo Beam, which is valid, but he only has 3 in the deck. So now he only has 2 in his deck total to deal with our Leviathan. And our Swain, because he doesn't have high-end removal. And it seems like he has a deck which is centered around playing Pursuit of Perfection. So we're actually going to take a look at how many different cards he played. So right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he has 8 different cards. When he gets to 20, then we need to start worrying. But Swain is a free develop here. Every time. And if we can help it, we want to save this 2 mana. Just in case he has a Thermo Beam for the Leviathan, we can give it +2 health and keep it alive. So we're going to bank this mana. His attack here does basically nothing. He also only has 2 health dudes. That's fine too. Also, I think he's at 10, maybe 11. All right, I'll have to recount. So he might have Equinox. He might have just put Equinox out on the board. He did not put Equinox on the board. All right, but how many units does he have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So he paid 11 different cards. Again, get to 20. That's the magic number that kills us. But it's one of the easiest plays right now, just a Leviathan. Absolutely. Super easy Leviathan play. Sure, he can heal. That's 12, by the way, for the card count. I'm assuming it's a Pursue Perfection deck because he's playing a lot of cards that like generate other cards. It'd be kind of weird if he didn't. So he's handing the pass off to me. Now, I could burn 6 mana, and like I said, once Leviathan's on the board, it's very good. And I do kind of want to save the Troll Chant in order to keep Leviathan alive. The 4-3 can only be blocked by the 4-1, being a beneficial trade to him. So I'm actually going to take this attack. Because in his current state, he could have multiple cards that deal like 3 damage, maybe... What's that card? I can't think. Get Excited, right? Between these 2 regions, Get Excited and like Hush. So yeah, he can Hush Swain. He can Hush Leviathan. But he's kind of lacking a lot of other ways to be able to deal with that. I'm okay if he wants to trade the 4-1 there. If he wants to trade into Swain, it's fine too. You know, now this is just putting more pressure on him. I'm trying to see how he reacts. Maybe he'll try to blast Swain. I don't really care if he kills Swain that much, though. I really don't, because I have another one. Another Sejuani. So it doesn't... I need to keep the Leviathan alive, but other than that, it doesn't matter too much. So I'm just going to accept this. Because now he might try to burn removal on Swain, as a lot of people do. And if he wants to double Get Excited Leviathan, he's burning so many cards to do so. Or even just Thermo Beam. Okay, so gotcha. Like I said, that's fine. We're okay with that. He's also up to 13 cards now. But that is fine. This is also a rank match, by the way. I will just, for those people who... I don't think I showed it, but this is a rank match. I'm in Diamond 2 right now with this deck, so this is totally ranked. That was 14-15, so we're actually getting very close to him having his card. We can Swain here. And now this is one of those situations where we're talking about, right? Where like, he's on a clock, he's passing, but Swain's just going to get bigger and bigger. And so we're actually going to put the kind of a little more fear into him and play a Riven too. So we're really scaring him, especially with him having nothing with more attack than with not 3 attacks. So Swain can do an extra 3 damage. Yeah, he has to play something. Where are we at? 15, 16, 7. So he's at 17, by the way. Quick attack. So I want to say we can full attack, but really don't need to. Because we can just Sejuani as well. And now we have Sejuani. She's upgraded, so we can get the freeze. And man... Let's go. Again, he is down to nothing. What is he going to do? Nothing. 0. Zilch. Nada. My board's crazy. Ballistic bot. Dude, you're done. You're done. And now with this Sejuani hit, everything will get frozen. So it doesn't even matter. If I really want to be annoying about it, I can go like this. Whoop, whoop, whoop. and have Swain at the very end. So if he wants to block things with Swain, her to die. Not like it matters. I also could have used quick attack. Okay. So see, like I said, hush. That's cool. He can hush Swain. He stops Swain from having Fearsome and doing extra 3 damage. But his board's a little bit dead. And it's a really nice thing about having Overwhelm units. Which one do I want to hit? I guess he can't kill that. Sejuani is the most health. Not like he can kill Sejuani, but we'll just go with this guy. So with this, dealing 2 damage to the unit means Sejuani does 2 more damage because of Overwhelm and 1 more damage to the Nexus. And that gives us the win. And that was a very straightforward game of exactly what you want to do with this deck. Get out your plunder as soon as possible. You have Leviathan, you play Sejuani on curve. Playing bigger things on curve, it's harder for them to deal with. As soon as your Leviathan comes out, if they can't deal with it, that's game over. Good stuff. Now, this video has already gone on for a little bit. And I mean, I feel like I could try for another game, but I've kind of spent a while, and I want to have this as like a nice, easy flow through. The more important thing is me describing the deck, right? The one game was just to see a little bit of how it plays out. If you want to see more of how this deck plays out, I will possibly be posting more of it, but I also have a previous video you can look at as well for some of that action. And with all that being said and done, I'm going to wrap it up here. So thank you everyone so much for watching. I am hobbitsizz, and I will see you in the next video. Toodles!